I'm going to show you how to use Alice Keeler's wonderful Rubric tab in order to answer that question I'm constantly getting from high school students. What can I do now because I'm done? Can I just play games or something? And the answer I can give, because I use this Rubric tab, is I ask them to look at their rubric and grade themselves. And do they have all fours? If you don't have all fours, you have more work to do. And very few students get all fours, and those students who tend to get all fours aren't the students who are typically asking if they can play games because they're done with everything. So what I'm going to do in this tutorial is just show you how to make a self-grading rubric and place it into the Google Classroom so each student can have a copy of that rubric and then grade themselves. But something that's kind of interesting, but beyond the scope of this tutorial, is that you can, using the same tool, enter your students' names and email addresses, and this software, this program made inside of Google Sheets, will make a tab for each student, and then you can grade the students yourself and then have a nice organized grade. You can have the grades emailed to the students, and then it also creates a nice spreadsheet where the students' grades and scores are right next to each other so that you can easily enter them into the grade book. But for this step, I'm going to focus on what you can do to make that rubric, and then how you can share that rubric in Google Classroom so students can self-assess, which is a powerful way of not only dealing with the I'm done, now what do I do, but helping students improve their own learning by having really clear objectives that they can learn from. Here's an example of the template. You'll notice they have these tabs down on the bottom of the spreadsheet. You go to the Edit This Rubric tab and you can type in stuff and edit this just like a spreadsheet. And you can also change these, the widths of these. You can also change the scores that go in these cells. Like for example in Baraboo, we want to make sure the lowest score is always at 40%, so we can edit that to a 40%. You might want to adjust some of these other numbers. There's a 15-point gap between advanced and proficient. If you want to keep that in, that's fine. If you wanted to change that, you sure could. And almost anything else in here you can edit. And then what's kind of neat is then you can give yourself a score, and it kind of highlights that and moves them around. Now I've already edited a spreadsheet for you, so you don't have to watch me type. And here are the criteria I use. And what I like to do is I like to, in my criteria, kind of extend it out and then say, here are the things you need. Here's the basic app components. And if you have all four, you're advanced. Here are some extensions that are worth less of the grade. But if you can do these extensions, you get bonus or additional points. And even if you can't do it, even if it's unacceptable, it's still only a 40%, so it doesn't kill your grade. You can still get a high B not doing any of the extensions, but that's kind of the way I have it set up. What I'm going to show you how to do, though, is take this rubric and place it into Google Classroom so that each student can open their own copy, and then they can score themselves and see how they're doing on the project. The first thing you need to do is create a student spreadsheet that you're going to distribute through Google Classroom. Now I'm just going to go to my Google Drive, and I'm going to create a new sheet. I'm going to call that sheet, in this case, Student Rubric Example. Now my student rubric example is just waiting to be filled with stuff. And here is my stuff that I'm going to copy. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to not use my normal click. I'm going to use my power click, that second mouse button, and I'm going to say copy to, and I'm going to move it to a new sheet, but I'm going to move it to one of those new recent sheets that I made, and that usually orders them chronologically, and since I just made that sheet, it's going to be right there. So I'm going to select that, and it's going to copy it down. It's there, it's good. And now when I look at that sheet, it's there, it's good. I'm going to rearrange these by just clicking and dragging, drop that thing down. I'm going to delete this extra sheet just so students are confused. I'm going to rename this sheet, and I'm going to say something clever like grade me And now the students can change these grades to whatever they want. I'm going to start them all by default on 0 so they can watch themselves move up. Their grade starts with a 40%, and as they do stuff, their grade would work up. Now I got to assign this to students. So I'm going to go to Google Classroom. Here is my Google Classroom. I'm going to show you in one of my sample classes here. I'm going to add an assignment. I'm going to call this assignment, please complete this self-grader. This is required. And I'm not going to do a due date or topic, but I am going to link it. It's in my Google Drive. It's a recent. Here it is. My rubric is right there. Now this step is really important. I don't want them to view the file. I want to make a copy for each student. So each student, as they click on this document, is going to get their own copy of this spreadsheet. So when they open up Google Classroom, they'll see this assignment. They'll click on it and they'll get their own copy of a rubric, and as they change their scores, it won't impact anyone else's score. It will just be their score, and they can change it to whatever they want it to be, and they can work their way up the rubric, and they can see what they need to work on to improve their score. You can also schedule this to be delivered later, but I'm just going to send it right out right now. That's the way you use the Alice Keeler's wonderful Rubric tab to give each student a copy of a rubric so that they can use it as a self-grader to see how they're doing on a project.